day. We're here at the property, and it's a warm one. So, got my towel on me because I sweat a lot. So, anyways, just spent a little bit of time in the shade for a minute. And I want to talk about this tool I've been using to cut up the logs into planks to lumber, you know, to use around here. And what it is a chainsaw mill by Strongway. It's I got the one that is for a 20-inch saw. They make them, they go bigger, but this one's up to 20 inches, so you could use I guess a smaller one too. Most of my logs aren't going to be of a diameter where I need anything bigger than a 20-inch bar. I noticed on some of them I cut that were, I have to measure them, but I'm guessing 15, 16 inches, and across the center diameter. You know, it's hard on the chainsaw, 20-inch, and so going a little bit smaller is fine. So for me, I think this will work out, and I've used it quite a bit. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about what it, you know, how good a tool it is, and what I like about it, and if there's any things I don't like, and then you can, you know, base that for what it's worth. You know, I do have some experience with it. I probably see, I've cut up completely 3 logs, and I gotta tell you, I've learned a lot during that process. The first log was a learning experience, but after that, it kind of got into a rhythm and how to use it. So let's switch it over, and I'll show you what we're looking at here. Hold on a minute. Now you're familiar with that thing. It's my old Still 390. So here's the chainsaw mill I got, and it's a Strongway. I wasn't so sure about, you know, which one to get, and I did go with the cheaper option because I really couldn't tell any difference between it and the other brands that I saw. I'll put a link to this product that I got out of Northern Tool, and you can see when you go to the page, there's other options. They're all a little bit more expensive. Some are really more expensive, but this one seemed to do the job. I didn't really have any complaints about it, really. It took me a little bit to figure out how to use it. Once I get the chainsaw put in it, then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things to keep an eye on. But as far as assembly, it was easy. All you had to do is put this on, put this on. So that's 2 bolts. You had, you know, this cross piece, so that's a bolt, this bolt, and then the plexiglass, which was 4 bolts, and then this. And so it didn't take any time to assemble it. I was ready to go in short order. Took me a bit to figure out the best way to attach it. So let me go through that process, and then I'll pick up on some of the things I liked and didn't like. So hold on now. All right, so hook this up. The chain saw is actually going to slide in through here. The bar does. You got these 2 bolts, which will secure the bar. They take a what's a 14 millimeter socket, and then the other 2 important bolts to know are these 2, this one and this one, which control your height. So, and those are 13 millimeter. So the way I put it on, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, but I lay my saw over, slide my bar on it, into it, and I make sure that the front, I'll show you this way without knocking it off, this top bar hits these, but I want this bar here to touch these. That's a good holding point. Once I have that, it's just a matter of tightening up these bolts. Now you want to make sure that your bar is centered. And so onto the bar is centered onto this little lug that holds the 2 bolts. So once that's done, and I actually make a point to really check that out. So mine needs to go over just a bit. Like that. Once you get it where you like it, and tighten one of them down. Tighten another bolt down. There we go. And make sure it's all centered. Does look pretty good. Right up against these teeth. So let me give it a good crank tighten on that. Not too tight, because then your chain won't move freely. There. Alright. So let me run through it real quick, piece by piece. Alright, so I probably didn't do the best job of explaining this, but hopefully you can see right in here. See how this bar I have up against the teeth. I don't know if you're supposed to do that, but once I started doing that, it just made everything simpler, easier. So I want it touching those teeth, and that's what I'm looking for. Make sure it does. All right, so get that. The other thing you want to do is make sure that there's like a little center lug right here. It's a build out, and so these 2 bolts go in. You want to try to get this centered on the bar and the bolts centered in there. The bolts are too close to one edge or the other, you'll pinch your channel and the chain won't run well. If you clamp these down too tight, you'll pinch your channel and the chain won't run very well. So a couple things you got to watch out for. So the other thing that I learned from experience is to go ahead and fill your saw up with oil and gas before you hook it onto here. So anyway, so let's turn it over on the side. It's got an adjustment for height, and I have mine set at, now it's just over 1 inch, and we'll go and it cuts it pretty consistently, just over 1 inch. And I can't make you see it, but this adjustment, I don't see how this numbering system on here equates to what the saw is actually doing. So that's something I haven't been able to correlate this numbering to this depth. And so maybe I'm doing something wrong, but what I do is I just take a tape measure and measure, and I get my measurement on what it is, so that I know, roughly I'm at about 1.25 inches right now. One of the I went through the comments on people who bought this, and one of the complaints they had was that the bar at the tip isn't the same depth as it is up close to the chainsaw. So what they did, one of the commentators did, was they filed off their tubing so that it would sit perpendicular, more perpendicular to the chain. I went back and measured a bunch of my wood to see if I was having a big issue. and I wasn't, I see, I mean, to the plexiglass here, that's almost 2 3/8, it looks like, about 2 3/8. To the top here, it's still about 2 3/8. So on here, you can see, I don't know if you can see that. So it's 2 3/8. Trying to show it roughly. I mean, not precise, but roughly it's 2 3/8, and it's the same at both points. And I went and checked my lumber that I cut, and some of them are right at about 1.25 inches all the way across. Some of them are about 1 inch on one end and about 1.25 inches on the other side, so they're crooked. And then some are a little thinner, about 1 inch all the way across. I did not see a consistent issue with that on the one I have, so that may have been an issue with the one the person bought. I don't know. So really, I mean, this whole setup has worked really well for me. The only complaint I have is I don't understand how this, I tried to use this numbering system. You can see the numbers there. It just didn't work for me. And it's not a big deal because I can use a tape, just as easy. So that would be the only downfall that I had with it. That and, when you first use it, you just gotta be, I wouldn't pick out your choicest piece of lumber, your tree. Don't, best cherry tree, that's the first one you're gonna use a chainsaw mill on. Yeah, I'd try something a little bit junkier and then work up to that. Get your process in place first, and then do something really expensive and nice before you do it. Make sure you're satisfied with your results. Maybe you are like the fella that you need to fine tune it by shimming your bars or filing your bars. Maybe I'm not looking for that precision, but I just didn't have that issue. So I didn't have that problem. Not to say I won't in the future, but right now I don't notice it. So technique is, you gotta get your technique down, and then off you go. So I'll put in the link, how much this was. The sawmill itself wasn't that expensive. Now I did make a mistake. Let's walk over and look at that. All right, so what I did buy that I didn't need was this rail system. And it's a good product. I have no issues with it. And it did what you needed to do. You set it up and you can level it so you get a perfectly level, straight first cut on your log. And it works fine. And I did that the first time. It's just the setup and everything takes a while. So I found it easier to use this, which is my beam cutter. Set up on this rig here, and I'd put it on the log, and my first cut would be nice and straight because I'm making like a beam, and I had no need for that rail system. So that's like $98, $100 I could have saved by not getting that. So I didn't need that. I'm not saying in somebody else's situation maybe they do need that, but this beam cutter is only like $30, and so I already had the beam cutter. I just didn't know that would work for it. So, and I live and learn. All right, Dave out.